Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Perolman and Sadie Gewirtz.
Good evening, everyone. It is a real privilege to be here. And I want to just start by saying that it takes a huge amount of courage and vulnerability to do this, and all the more so when you're 17 years old. So Sadie, just for a second before we start, I want you to look out at everyone who's here. TBJ fans, teachers, friends, people who have known you since you were born, and new friends. And the wonderful thing about doing this here is that everyone here is excited to be here. They're proud of you. And I'll just say that we're going to have a great conversation. Like everything else you do in life, you've put a lot of work into tonight, but now we just get to enjoy ourselves. So, and thank you for inviting me to be in this conversation with you. So if you have Sadie's book or you've seen it on Instagram, the kind of like logo is a superhero, and like there's like the Instagram is like a brain with a cape. So Sadie, my first question for you is that every superhero has an origin story, the thing that kind of made them into a superhero. It led them to figure out that they have a special power. So I'd love to hear from you. What is your origin story?
So, it's not like I got bit by a radioactive spider or anything, but ever since kindergarten, I've been told that I was just a different person. I was the stereotypical boy in the classroom, meaning, I was always loud, I was always interrupting, I was not sitting still, I was crazy. And towards the end of the kindergarten year, Miss Kessler, who's the TBJ kindergarten teacher, said, something's going on to my parents. One day she'll walk in knowing that alphabet, knowing the words we practice, knowing the multiplication, and then the next day it's like she forgot everything. So she said, just keep an eye on it and just see what happens in the next year. So I then head to first grade at SMS, and my teacher, Miss Salvis, noticed the exact same thing. She said, I don't know what's going on, but something's happening, and you need to get her tested. And she said, this is going to be a really hard fight, but I'm here the whole way. And if you don't know, the district really doesn't like testing kids because it costs a lot of money, and they don't want to take it out of the district funds. So you really have to fight your case in order to get tested. That started the whole journey of my parents and my new teacher, Miss Salvis, going to countless meetings to try to get my case up and get me tested. And after a long fight, I got tested, and I ended up having a deficiency in memory recall, so it was really hard for me to remember stuff, and then an auditory processing disorder. So that really just started my whole journey on everything. And when you get tested, you get what's called a 504 or IEP, which is a list of accommodations that they give you that teachers are supposed to follow. So you would think that it helps, but honestly, a lot of teachers don't follow it. So we had to even get the school involved and a lawyer to help us figure out how to make sure teachers follow this. So many years, go by, and we're still fighting and trying to make sure I'm getting taught how I'm supposed to. And I enter middle school, and I start getting older, and the classes start getting harder. And I go up to my parents and I say, I think I need to get tested for ADHD. And they kind of just ignore it and say, you're someone who has a big personality, and this just is who you are. I don't think you have ADHD. Let's wait. So we wait, and I keep on going back up to them and say it again and again, and eventually they say fine. And I think they didn't want to because they knew how much the fight was going to be. And this time the district wouldn't allow us to get tested, so we had to go outside the district to get tested. And the doctor literally said the results were off the charts, and I have ADHD.
You've always been extraordinary, so I have no doubt that you were extraordinary. It's a lot. I mean, if you think about it, that's a lot for like a young person to hold, like lawyers and testing, and they're letting me do things. Did you have a sense, did you kind of understand that that this was bigger than just, it's sometimes hard for me to remember things?
I mean, not really. I was so young. I think I would always be confused because I was always that kid who got pulled out during class to get extra reading help. And I was with a few other kids, and I was why am I getting pulled out? Why am I stupid? But I didn't really understand anything because I was so young.
So for those who don't know, I mean, I think ADHD is one of those words that sort of has like this whole like we use it in lots of different ways. Can you tell us like what is ADHD and what does it look like for a person? I know that it's not the same for everyone, but sort of what does it look like for a person who has ADHD?
So the definition is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think of it as two just separate things. So one side is the focusing part, which is, let's say you're in a meeting and you're in a really interesting topic that you love, but no matter what, you just can't focus. That's the focusing part. And then the hyperactivity part is no matter what, you just can't sit still. If you got back from a long day and all you want to do is rest, but somehow you can't. I always explain to people that, let's say you're climbing up a hill and one side is like a normal brain and the other side is the ADHD brain. And the normal brain is just walking with music and smiling and barely, they're getting up easily, while the ADHD brain is running tirelessly and like they can't get up the hill. And eventually they do, but it takes them twice as longer. And I say that because ADHD brains often have to take the extra steps to get just to the place that another person would get to. It's like when you have like 50 tabs open at a time on a computer. And it's really hard for ADHD brains to filter out noises and distractions. So there's always something going on in my head and ADHD brain's head. It's like if you think when you're taking a test, you only have two distractions, the AC and the clock ticking. The ADHD brains have so much more and they can't even focus on the test. And the worst thing about it is that the voice that keeps on telling them all these thoughts is really addictive and it's hard to turn it off, which is the hardest part.
And it must be even harder, like I love the metaphor of the like tabs on the computer because I think all of us can like connect to that. But it must be also really hard when you like then need to have the literal tabs open on your computer to do things, right? I mean, I'm wondering, what are some of the ways that you knew? Like there's this definition of ADHD, you kind of knew this stuff about yourself from when you were a child, but what are the ways that you know that your brain works differently than other people's brains?
So when I was younger, one of my biggest insecurities was I was always interrupting people, and teachers would always get mad. I'd always get pulled aside saying, you have to stop doing this, but I didn't even know I was doing it until my voice came out because I just felt like I needed to get my voice in. I didn't think of it as rude, and I thought that if I didn't say it in that moment, then I would just forget it a second later. And the reason that is because I found out later that ADHD brains have a really hard time prioritizing information. So whatever comes to mind, they just say it. It's really hard to know the details of information, which is why my parents always tell me I don't know how to read a room, because I just say whatever comes to my mind. But another thing was I could never rest, and I was always moving. So whenever we were at a family dinner, my mom would say, go take a lap, because she could tell I just couldn't sit down. And my siblings would say, you don't need to do that. It's an hour. You can sit still. But I would say, I couldn't. I didn't know how. It just physically wasn't possible for me. And I think it was because I always categorized rest meaning failure. So I thought I could have been more productive than just sitting in my bed and watching TV. Another big thing was I was always spacing out or forgetting something. So even before my parents knew my diagnosis, when I was younger, they would place me in the middle of our family dinner table so I could flow with the conversation better and be in it more. And even then, I would just space out. And then 5 seconds later, I'd be like, what? And my siblings would get so mad because they were like, can you just stay in this conversation? And I would forget who people were, and I didn't know it was a problem until it was.
I found it really powerful, the idea that rest felt like failure, because I think that's something that like our culture really sometimes does. Like everything you're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be so productive, and even like the things we enjoy, like reading books, you have to like log them and do this, and there's like a lot of pressure to kind of be productive. And it sounds like part of what I think a lot of people feel is that like when you just take a break, like even your rest should be productive. And like part of what it sounds like is hard to do is just to say like, to like actually turn off your brain enough to relax and to like sort of let yourself actually rest. So you get diagnosed, you're in like 8th or 9th grade here. What were some things that happened, sort of once you had this diagnosis that made life easier, or made like sort of this new part of your life with the diagnosis that made it easier for you?
I mean, honestly, that was a big learning curve, and I don't remember so much of it because I was just so overwhelmed and I was so little. But, and I know this might be a little controversial, but what helped me was my medication. That was the first thing that, in the first time in forever, I felt like my own person, and I felt in control of my own body. I never felt something like that until I took it. And I felt like I could actually move and not when I wanted to, and I felt stable. My mom always told me that when I took the medication, everyone's worried that there's so many side effects, but she said I barely had any because my body needed it so much. So I just think that was the first thing that calmed me and like kept me sane. And then the second thing was teachers. So I know not every teacher is the best, and I've had a lot of bad experience with that, but I've also had really good ones. So I had this one teacher in middle school who she's a floater teacher, and she happened to move up every grade I was in. So we met in 6th grade, and ever since then, she knew me so well without me having to say it. She just understood me. She knew what I was going through. She could help me academically and mentally, and I just think that's really important to have, because if you get this new diagnosis and you're so overwhelmed and no one knows what's in your brain, but then there's this person who knows what you're going through and has the same thing and could help you, and you trust them, and they can help you with school too and outside of school. So that was one of the biggest things that helped me.
So what are some of your strategies? Because we'll get to the book in a couple of minutes, but there's sort of this like journey you've been on from like being a kid, and then you got older, and then you got diagnosed. So like the distance between getting diagnosed and the book is a bunch of years. So can you tell us a little bit about some of your strategies for how you learned how to sort of use your brain to your advantage and to like use these special qualities, which are challenging, but also have some positives? How did your life maybe get easier once you actually knew what was going on?
So the first thing that probably everyone does is the fidget toys. Those are a big help. I bring them to your sermons, my dad's. Those get pretty long.
You're all allowed to laugh at that.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. So, yeah, and I think
you were talking about how long your dad's sermons were.
So I think that's actually a big misunderstanding, because a lot of times when I was little, teachers would tell me and take away my fidget toys, but they didn't understand that was the thing that actually kept me in control of myself. I think for other people it could be distracting, especially if other people want to touch my fidget toy, but it really was the only thing that could keep me sitting on the rug and listening to this book. So that's a big thing. Another thing that I learned going into high school was the ability to take a lot of breaks and accept that I'm going to have to be taking a longer amount to do something than other people. And that was a big learning curve for me, because I didn't like the fact that I had to study for a test 2 hours more than my friends. But I had to accept that and say, that's my brain, and as long as I get to the goal and I pass the test, that's all that really matters. So what I do is I get home from school, and I set a 30-minute timer, and I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I do whatever work I can get done in those 30 minutes. And then once the timer goes off, I stop, and I put on another 5 to 10-minute timer, depending on how much homework I have. And I take a break, whether that's walking my dog, walking around the house. Me and my mom always do these puzzles, so sometimes we do little puzzles. And sometimes I scroll on TikTok, which is probably not the best thing to do. But, and I find that those breaks really help, because I realize that you can't be productive if you're just doing work countless and countless hours without a break. Another thing that I just had to accept is the ability to talk about it, because I used to not talk about it, and I realized that if you don't talk about it, then you're not going to be able to embrace what you have, and it's not like ADHD just goes away. So instead of hiding it, you should just learn to embrace it, which is my whole point. And my dad always told me that it's the same thing as, if you have diabetes, you take insulin, and you have to deal with that, and you don't hide it, it's on your body. And if you have ADHD, you take medication, and you have to do stuff to help yourself, and that's just how it works.
And I think one of the things that's happened, I don't know, in the last generation is that there used to be this big divide, like if you broke your foot, no one would say like, oh, just get over it. But when it came to like mental health, people were they were sort of more anxious, like, oh, I should be able to just like figure it out. And the same with anxiety, depression, all these sorts of things. There's been like, I think, an opening in our world, and it's mostly because of people talking about it, saying like, here's how this is what my body needs. And talking about it sort of like demystifies it. Like it's like a balloon, and then like you just pop it and you say like, you can just, let yourself say like, this is what my body needs. And I think it's such a great metaphor because, there should be no shame in taking medication. You need to, because that's why it exists. Thank God that there's medications that help you do this or help any of us do this. So let me ask you about how you came to writing the book. I feel like one day it just appeared, but that's not really what happened. Like this was a long project. So can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to write it, how you decided to sort of like come out about having ADHD and start talking about it? Tell us how the book came to be.
So it definitely wasn't anything I expected it to be. But we all know I'm a junior in high school, which is tough.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of work. You have to keep your grades up. You have to enroll yourself in all these APs and do all these extracurricular activities to impress college or whatever. It's so stupid. One time I was on the phone with my college counselor, and you have to fill in this activity list. And she was showing me an example and said, this person did something book. And I laughed. I was like, what? How could I write a book? And she's like, I think you could do this. And I was like, again, why would I do that? Like, I laughed in her face. I didn't think I could do it. And she said, okay, think about it. Just, take a week, whatever, come back. So to be honest, I didn't really think about it much because I didn't think it was a possibility for me. And then one day it came to my mind, and I realized, this is something I could do. And if you don't know me, like Aubrey said, I love kids. And if I walk in a room and I see kids, parents, and my best friends, I'm going to choose the kids. I just love them. And I would always gravitate towards them. So I realized that, I could do something that I'm passionate about, and at the same time, something that I know a lot about and that I have, which is ADHD. And I could turn this into something that, a tool that I didn't have, because if I got diagnosed, I would really want this. And I also wanted to give parents the perspective that they never had, because I knew that parents, they're probably struggling and they don't know, if your kid got diagnosed, they're like, how do I do this? And if they read this and then they see that this kid is giving you a perspective of what goes inside an ADHD kid's brain, I think that could really help. So although it started as something, to fill a resume, it's nothing like that anymore. And I'm really happy of how far I've come.
I totally agree. And I think, the idea that this is here, and we're going to talk about sort of what's inside the book now, but it really is meant to be accessible for kids, for tweens, for parents, and that it's actually something that parents love to think they know everything, but when it comes to being a teenager with ADHD, they may actually not know that, and you're going to share with them some insights that they need to know. The cool thing about this book, it's almost like an optical illusion because there's information, but you wrote it in a way, this is the part that I thought was so cool. You open it up and it's actually written in a way that a person who has ADHD is going to be able to use this book. But tell us a little bit about how you laid it out, how you decided how many chapters, how you decided how many words on each page. Tell us a little bit about actually how the creation of the book came to be.
So something that I always remembered when I was younger was I hated reading, which is probably hard for you to hear because you love reading. But I always thought it was a chore to read. And, my parents would even offer me $5 to read a book, and I would still refuse it. And I didn't think of it now, but now I realize that It's because I probably just didn't know how to focus in on a book and cancel out all the other thoughts that's going on in the head. And I hated it. So I really wanted to make it so kids didn't hate it and they wanted to pick up the book and they didn't think it was a chore. So first, like any other kid book, it has a lot of colors to attract the kids. And it also has a built-in activity. So, they can read what I said. I don't remember what page it is on, but they could read my example to-do list, and then they could, try to apply it to themselves. And I think what I really wanted to happen is I didn't want kids to just read it and then put it away. I wanted them to read it and actually be able to use this and take it and, write it on their own. And, my friend Layla Charette is here today, and I think she could talk more about this because she's my illustrator and one of my really good friends. So if you want to come talk about.
You want Layla, you want to come just because Layla is also here. Let's give her a round of applause, everyone. We're going to let her. Layla, how did you and Sadie work together? Just tell us a little bit about this.
Okay, so one day at Diller, I'm also in Diller with Sadie. She came up to me and she was like, I'm going to write a book about ADHD. I was like, that's so cool, because I also have an IEP and a learning disability. I have an auditory processing disorder, which I struggle with, like reading comprehension and things like that. And I was like, I'd love to be a part of this project and help illustrate the book. And yeah, it's been amazing from there. She told me about some of the things that she was writing, and we came up with all of the designs together, and it's been the best process.
And you'll get to see those illustrations too. Thanks, Layla. Thank you. I feel like there has been this change, which is like you and your friend just getting up here and saying like, I have an IEP, I have this processing thing, I have this. And I feel like that is really something that has changed, in that when I was in school, if you needed to be pulled out, you were embarrassed. You never would talk about it. It would be like the most, more than medication. It was so much shame if you had any kind of challenge. And I feel like one of the beautiful things about this world is just saying like, here's how I need to learn. Here's what I need. And you said this, I thought it was so interesting that, even the idea, like the picture, we started with this, like the brain with the cape. It's like, even if you struggle with reading or comprehension or this, like you get what you're talking about. The brain is the superhero. You make it like really, really simple. We're gonna get into, and I have a few more questions for Sadie, and then if you have questions, we're gonna pass around the mic and let you ask questions for her too. But there are lots of parents in this room. Some of them are here with their kids, and there are lots of people who may be caregivers or people who love somebody who has ADHD. What are some ways that parents and people who, are in parental roles can support a young person in their life who has ADHD? Especially if the parent themselves does not have it. If the parent has it, that's one thing, but we're talking about like a parent who their kid gets diagnosed and they're like suddenly in the wilderness. So that's the question I really want you to answer.
So a couple weeks ago, I got an email from this grandfather who said, before I read your book, I never understood ADHD. I thought it was sort of fake, and I didn't get it. And his grandson has it, and he just wouldn't be able to connect with him because he thought he was weird and just different, and he didn't know how to form a relationship with him. And he said after he read it, his perspective changed, and he was able to understand what an ADHD brain goes through and how to approach it, and he started building his relationship with his grandson. And yeah, so I'm telling that story because I obviously know it's probably really hard for parents to parent kids with, in general, but also with ADHD. But I know it's even harder for kids to know that their parents don't know what they're doing and don't understand what they're going through. And I think that's something that I felt because I didn't want kids to think that the parents were embarrassed of them or didn't know what they were going through, and that's why I wanted to write this. And so I think a way that parents could support kids is doing their research and reading books like these to understand what is going on in their kid's brain, and most of all, not feel ashamed of their kid, because if the kid sees that the parent is embarrassed and ashamed and doesn't know what to do, then the kid is also going to feel that way. And the most important thing is for the kid to not hide this, because they have it and they should accept it. And another thing is how parents should deal with one kid versus the other, ADHD versus not. And I think this is really challenging because, your kid gets diagnosed and you don't know what to do, and then you have this other sibling and you don't know how to difference the parenting. But I think, I don't have the answer for that, but I think it's really important to learn how to, not every kid is going to be parented the same way, and you're going to have to treat kids differently, and I think that's a really important thing to understand.
And the idea that you can't just sort of say okay, everyone's going to sit here for an hour for dinner. Some people are going to need to take a lap, and some people might need to take 3 laps, and some people can sit the whole time. And I think what you're talking about is actually seeing each person as an individual. Yeah. And one thing that you had told me was that people with ADHD sort of have this, and this is certainly true of you, I've known you your whole life, but are sensitive with high empathy, high EQ, but it actually means you're more sensitive to the world. So things just make you upset that don't make other people upset, or you're more affected by the things in the world than perhaps other people are. And that's something that parents also have to deal with. You actually wrote down 2 other things, because I want to say this. One is, helping your child, rewarding when you complete something, helping them think through the next steps. We're going to move into some really practical things here, but understanding your child enough to kind of parent them the way they need to be parented, which is really hard. And as you said, parenting is really hard, but actually doing the research, reading, getting the kind of support, because parents actually need that kind of support to be able to support their kids.
I think also,
yes, please.
I think also sitting down with the kid and saying, this is what you have, here's what it is, here's what it means, and showing resources like these, because I don't really remember going through those conversations because I was probably older and I knew what it was, but I think if I did, then I would feel less insecure about it, and I would want to own it.
Yeah. So can you tell me your favorite thing about having ADHD?
So, like you mentioned, people with ADHD are very sensitive, and they overthink a lot. And I used to hate that because I would always just be in my bed and I could not fall asleep because I'm just thinking about everything. And I know everyone thinks about everything, but just imagine 10 times more, because again, ADHD people don't know how to filter out noises or thoughts, and everything just keeps on rolling in. And I used to really hate that, especially on days where my brain felt out of control and I couldn't turn the thoughts off. But I realized that led me to be more empathetic and understanding of people, because I would analyze people so deeply. I could figure out what people were going through, and I just thought about people too much, and it turned me into a deeper human. So, that started as something that I hated, but now I'm learning to realize that it's something that makes me stronger.
And I think the world could use more deep humans who care about people. I think that given the state of things, I think that's something that we're lucky to have in you. Okay, a couple more questions. It sounds like one of the things that, especially being diagnosed in sort of this time in your life, is that you've had to learn how to advocate for yourself, and you've had to become sort of the defender of yourself because the world wasn't going to do it for you. So can you just tell us about a time that you've advocated for yourself to, either in the accommodations or in your life, to ensure that you were actually able to achieve everything you wanted to?
I have 2 big stories. Well, first, I feel like I advocate for myself every day, especially getting older, because teachers, I think as you get older, they don't really care as much, not trying to offend anyone, but I think they have one way of teaching, and they like their one way of teaching, and they don't do anything else. So I would say I advocate every day, but I have 2 big stories. So first, I think this was about last year. I play volleyball. I'm on a club volleyball team, and we had a huge tournament. and we had to learn a new rotation, which is just something, I don't know how to explain it. It's like something you have to do, and you have to like switch places, and it's really complicated. And we had to learn a new one because someone got sick and another person got hurt. So right before the game started, our coach just told us out loud how to do these rotations, and I came up to her after the meeting and I said, I don't understand. Can you show me maybe? And she said, there's no time for that. You just have to go on the court. And at that time I was libero, so they stay on the whole time. And I made a really bad call and I thought it was out, and then I didn't know where to go because I didn't understand. And I think I was really mad at myself after that because she yelled at me. And at first I thought it was my fault because I didn't understand. But then I realized that I asked her to, teach me in a way that I needed to be taught, and she didn't. And that's not my fault. And I think the big part of advocating is, you do as much as you can. You stand up for yourself and say how you need to be taught. And if that doesn't work, it sucks. Like, not everything is going to work out. But I think that part is really important. And I wish I said maybe you need to show me visually, but somehow she didn't understand, and not everything works out. The opposite side of that is sophomore year, I was entering AP classes, and I was picking my first one, which was APUSH, which is AP US History. And my parents did not really want me to take it because they thought, school's already stressful and you have too much going on and you don't need this. And I said, everyone's taking it. I think I can do it. I think I can handle it. And they said, okay, just on the first day of school, talk to the teacher and see what he thinks. So after class, I go up to him and I say, I know you have no idea who I am, and I know I have no idea who you are, but I have A, B, and C, and I don't know if I can do this. And he said, first of all, I also don't know who you are, but I saw your grades, and you coming up here showed enough that I know you can be in this class. And I said, well, I don't know. You have to memorize 2 years worth of information and all these years of history. And he said, I can help you. I'm here to support you, and I think you can do it. And I think that really just showed me that, you need those teachers to push you. And that's another side of when you advocate and it does work out. And maybe if I didn't do that, I would have not taken it. And now I'm here 2 years out of the course, and I ended with an A+, and I took the exam.
Not bad. So let's talk about big things, because I feel like, no one would blame you if you said, listen, I'm going to just do what I can do because, life is this is harder for me than other people. It would be just easier to sort of do the bare minimum or kind of just not challenge myself. But you have these AP classes, and then, you have all these big moments. You are involved in a lot of different things, as we heard. You're baking challah and taking orders and delivering them to my house, and traveling to Israel and going here, and you got half of TBJ texting you, can you babysit for me? How do you actually do it? Because I feel the impulse could be listen, I just can't do anything. I have to kind of keep my life really small. But your life is so big. I feel like most people are always nervous about forgetting their passport when they're traveling. But a person with ADHD actually might legitimately forget their passport because they just forget to get it. So how do you actually live this big world in this big life? How do you do it? What do you do? What are some of the tips and tricks that you use to make your life happen?
So this is something that I still am figuring out to this day because, as you get older, you have more activities, like you said. And something about ADHD is ADHD brains never want to stop, like I said before. And that I do that. I never want to be home. My parents have to beg me to stay home, and they have to tell me to stop doing all these activities. So the first thing I would say is the support from your parents and friends and peers to tell you you're doing enough, you're fine, you have to stop. And that also goes hand in hand with rest. And as I said before, I always like think rest is failure. And I would come back from a long day with friends, school, volleyball, and I would not want to rest. I would want to go back out, and I would want to do something. And I felt like I couldn't rest for more than an hour. But I realized that I'm not going to, succeed if I don't rest and restore my brain. Everyone needs rest. And something that I'm still figuring out how is to prioritize myself, because I always put other people first, which is great. But, during AP season, I didn't know how to just stay home and say, I need to take a nap or I need to go to sleep. So I think definitely prioritizing rest and yourself. And something that I started this year was I tried to do something every day for myself. So either like recently I read like 10 pages of a book, which seems like nothing, but for me it's a lot. Or I would do a little bit of a puzzle or put a face mask on, I don't know. And that just taught me that, you really do have to prioritize yourself, or else you're just gonna keep on going and you're gonna crash. And I also realized that it's okay to crash, because it's okay to cry. It's okay to realize that it's okay to not be okay. And I still don't always believe that, but I try to. And yeah, so that's one thing. Another thing is, I think, making a to-do list, especially when traveling. So something that I always did when I was younger with my mom is I would write down the stuff that I needed, but I would write it down, not her, because if I write it down, then I can actually remember it. If she writes it down, I'm not going to remember it. So I write down all the stuff, I lay it all out, and even the stupid stuff like a toothbrush, like you said, or EpiPen, because I have allergies, or my medication, because those are stuff that I've forgotten, but you can't. So even the little stuff you have to be writing down. And another thing that I learned entering high school was distributed practice. So not doing everything at once. Like my mom would always joke that if we had a trip planned for the year before, I already start packing the year of, because I want to start right away. But I really think it is helpful because, you don't want to be cramming and doing it all at once, because then you're going to be stressed. Everyone's going to. My tutor, when I was in like 6th grade, taught me that you should always break down the work, which sounds like the same thing as distributed practice, but it's not. So she taught me that, if you're reading an essay and you have to analyze it, instead of reading the whole thing, read paragraph by paragraph, and then take that paragraph and read sentence by sentence and analyze each and every sentence. And it seems like a lot of work, and it is, but it really goes a long way, and it helps a lot and makes you less stressed out.
Okay, so we're going to do like a lightning round here. So there's lots of people in this room. I want to hear like one or two things that the following people can do for someone in their life who has ADHD. Okay, the first is a friend. What should a friend do?
I think humor. Me and my friends always make fun of each other, and it's the best way to laugh, I think. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, a sibling. What's the best thing a sibling can do?
Definitely patience and understanding, not hitting whoever she is.
I actually have no idea who she's talking
here.
to even there. What about a teacher?
I think, okay, this is going to be a little longer.
Yeah, that's okay.
But
Yeah.
I think what I've experienced is either teachers go one or two ways. They either think you're stupid and they don't give you enough work and they don't push you, or they think your diagnosis is not real. So I think the best way for teachers to find the middle ground and, listen to your accommodations, help you the way you need to, but not give you any benefits or breaks and push you to succeed.
What do you think about like a community, like people in communities? Like, we're going to talk about being Jewish, but like in this community, I'm thinking about times when, I'm sitting with confirmation students and I say something verbally and, it didn't even dawn on me that like I should write it down because maybe that's not what I need. But what you're saying also is that like perhaps there's ways in which even a community could be more accommodating and pay attention to the people who are in the room. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think definitely accepting and realizing that everyone has a struggle. It's not just me. Everyone has, dyslexia, anxiety, social anxiety, family issues. I don't know. Everyone has something, and you need to understand that just because it's not, outside, it's internal, and you just need to give everyone a break and, accepting.
Yeah. So I think it goes without saying that you're Jewish. Here we are. I said this to you when we were preparing. I said, like, so not that, like, what's Jewish about ADHD, but what would you say, you spend so much of your life immersed in a Jewish community. Talk to us a little bit about, is there something that Judaism has contributed to the way in which you've dealt with this in your life?
So I've always been a part of Judaism, not just because of my dad, but even after my bat mitzvah, I would do it for myself. And I don't know exactly why, but I think whenever I'm, at a temple or with my Jewish friends, I feel closest to them and I feel like I could be myself. And I think that's something that I love about the Jewish community is we all have something in common and everyone just understands each other on a deeper level. That's what I love about the Jewish community is you guys, everyone is already accepting, and I feel like myself whenever I'm with Jewish people, honestly.
I can't argue about that. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to take a few questions from the audience. Do you think that there's a way that TBJ could, like, what's one thing that TBJ could take away from our conversation tonight that maybe our community could do differently?
I think I said, everyone has a struggle, and the struggle that you have, you shouldn't hide it, and instead you should embrace it because most likely, like ADHD, it's not going away, and you could do stuff to minimize it, but it's not going anywhere. And if you hide it, it's just gonna make things worse. And you don't want the struggle to take you down. Instead, don't make us perfect, make us beautiful. And having a lot of bravery, going for it, just embracing the struggles in your life.
We're going to take a few questions before we close, but let's let Sadie take a drink of water. We're going to give her a hand.
Sadie, thank you very, very much. You sound exactly like my granddaughter who's just graduating 8th grade, so you've given me a ton to think about. What are you doing about college? That's coming up. I mean, that's a huge transformation for you.
Sadie, I don't think you've thought about college at all, right? I'm sure you are just...
Since I was 5.
Only since you were 5, goodness.
I don't really know what I want to do, but I know I want to do something helping people directly, maybe something to do with Judaism. I know I want to go to Israel after I graduate because I love it, and yeah, I want to study maybe psychology or pre-med, something like that. I don't really know.
There are a few questions about the title of the book. What does that mean, the tea?
Oh, yeah. What does the tea mean?
So my dad was actually asking me this like a few weeks ago. But the tea, it's like a newish word. It's like, drama, like spilling the tea. So Rabbi Karen actually got me this bracelet that says spilling the tea. And it means like giving people the information and, telling your friends the tea. That's what people call it. The Tea About ADHD, it's the book. It's the Tea About ADHD.
Yeah, it's the deal. It's the info.
Information about the book, yeah.
As an educator, you're where I wish a lot of students were, where you're owning your disability, you're comfortable talking about it, you have an IEP, it's no big deal. You obviously understand that. What can we do as educators, as a community, to help students own their disabilities, become comfortable with having an IEP and not having that stigma attached to it?
I definitely think in my school, when you associate an IEP or 504, people immediately, go to it as stupid, which I used to do for a long time. And I think that's because, teachers don't really talk about it enough. So I think, talking about it and using it in a classroom setting rather than, usually if you have one, you just have to, at least in my school, you have to go up to them. And I think the teachers going up to you, especially in high school, would really help and saying in a classroom setting, if you have this, come talk to me, because then everyone knows that, you're not alone and there's not only 2 people in the classroom that have it.
How long did it take you to write the book? And once you wrote it, did you have a problem finding somebody to publish it?
So yeah, it took a while. It's a lot of drafting, going back and forth, editing, self-published.
It's self-published.
Yeah.
It's a book that we couldn't wait. It couldn't wait for the right publisher.
Just wanted to get it out.
You want to get it out in the world, exactly. Well, thank you for those questions. I'm just going to close by saying that, Sadie, last night, you and I and a lot of other people were at another event where we heard Rachel Goldberg Poland speak. And, she has this line that I've thought a lot about, which is she says, "Those who have a why can handle any how." And of course, that's a totally different kind of how and why. But I think that one of the things that I've been reflecting on is that the hows are different for all of us. Like, life gives us all kinds of challenges. And I think one of the most beautiful things we can do is to take those challenges and not to gloss over them or say everything's okay or, I'll pretend it doesn't exist, but to own it and to sort of walk confidently into it. And I was reflecting on that because, the why and the how are things that you are modeling for all of us at a very young age. It is no surprise that myself and everyone who's at TBJ, we are huge fans of yours, not only because of who your dad is, but really because of who you are. And watching you grow from the early childhood center into bar and bat mitzvah, into confirmation, and now being here and owning this and owning our conversation and really owning who you are, that the hows in life may be challenging, but you have the why. And I am incredibly proud of you. I can't believe I made it through this without crying, but I did because I know that everyone in this room is such an incredible fan of yours. And one of the beautiful things that this event is doing, not only that you all bought books, but lots of people donated so that books can be given to schools, our school, schools all around Essex County, and to spill the tea with everyone who needs to read it. So on behalf of everyone, let's congratulate our author tonight, Mazel Tov.